welcome to Let's Connect on 88.5 Sufre FM. It is Tuesday, November 16th, 2021, and we have a wonderful show for you tonight. We're going to be talking with some youth advocates relating to the topic youth and crime. But first off, we want to do a couple of shout outs. I want to give a shout out to all the communities of Soufre and Force Jacques. Thank you so very much for tuning in. We want to thank you all for being with us through our transition from Liberty FM onto 88.5 Soufre FM. Thank you for sticking with us. I want to give a shout out to Adelta Bowens of St. Vincent, who is always tuned in. Thank you so very much for your support. And also to the Dusauzay family, Mr. Edward Dusauzay, especially of New Development. Thank you for your support of the Let's Connect program. I want to apologize for the absence of our district representative this week. She is currently out of Ireland representing St. Lucia in other matters overseas. Okay, so we will be joined this evening by 3 representatives of a youth organization, and they are advocates for the youth, and I've worked with them on several various issues, and we had a very interesting conversation last week, Wednesday, after a spat of criminal activity in the island, especially dealing with the youth, and we felt it was necessary to approach this topic. So I want to welcome to the program Mr. Nicolai Lansiquot and Mr. Jade Gustave. Will be joined later on by a third individual. So welcome to the program, Mr. Nicolai and Jade. Thanks for joining us.
Good night. Thank you for having us, Reneata.
Yes.
Thank you so very much. So I wanted to, my first question for you this evening is, why did the youth organization, I should say, feel that it was necessary to broach the topic of crime among the youth? Jade, you can go first.
Yeah, well, as you may know, we're part of a youth group, and we represent the young persons in general, not just in St. Lucia, but that would be in the Caribbean. So whatever the youth are part of, then we are part of that. So if the young guys or the young ladies are into violent activities, then that should affect us as well. We should be the ones to pull them up and say, hey, this is not the way to go, and direct them into the right path, because we, like I said, are young persons as well.
Okay, Mr. Lansiquot.
Well, good night, everybody. For our part, you realize that there's a prevalence or a high volume of crime and violence, predominantly among young persons within the age group 18 to 35. And I believe, as a youth advocate, as somebody who falls within that age group or bracket, it is incumbent on us to speak on issues related to crime, violence, and social ills.
Okay. We have Mr. Oswald Montout with us now. Welcome to the Let's Connect program, Mr. Oswald Montout of the youth organization as well, another youth advocate. We were just speaking, sir, on the reason that the youth organization felt it necessary to broach the topic of crime among youth. Can you give us your take on that?
Hey, good evening.
Go ahead. I'm not sure if Oswald froze. I think he's having some internet issues. Okay, so we've discussed on our youth organization platform some of the reasons that we feel that crime is on an uptick at the moment. What do you think some of those reasons are for you personally in your experiences, Mr. Jade Gustave?
Okay, for my personal experience, I believe the prison system, the court system in itself is very slow. It acts as prison acts as a block for some of the young men who are, charged for simple offenses, like probably breaking and entering. I believe when they enter in an institute like a Borderley Correctional Facility, they don't learn what's needed to come out and be better individuals, but they gather the negative information rather, because there, as we all may know, there are so many persons who are doing life and they have no interest on returning to the streets. So they will definitely share their knowledge to the young persons. They will tell them what to do, what not to do, and the crime continues basically. Yeah, I honestly believe as well. We, as people in St. Lucia, we look down on the young men, especially. We see them with their pants sagging, the cornrows on their head, their locks, the tattoos, and we say, "Hey, this is a thug." And you know what? They say, "Okay, I'm just gonna go with the flow. I'm gonna shoot this guy. I'm gonna act like a bad boy. I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna do that." So it actually starts with us as a people to make the change.
Okay, so I'm getting two separate points there from you. You're saying that Bordelais is not really a rehabilitation center, it is more like
Correct.
a training center for more criminal activity.
Correct.
And you're also saying that we're putting a stigma based on
Hmm.
appearance of our youth.
That
Okay,
is
so
right.
Nicola,
Hmm.
agree with what Jade is saying. Do you have other reasons that you feel that crime is on the uptick?
Well, first of all, I want to just echo the sentiments of my comrade Jade in saying that Bordelais Correctional Facility is not a correctional facility, but more
Hmm.
of a training ground or breeding ground for criminality. There's no rehabilitation going on there. So
Hmm.
when the guys go there and they come out, it's almost as if they go to graduate to come out to do more crime and what have you. But in terms of why crime is a problem and what causes crime, I think that is uh, we can approach it from several different angles. And one can argue unemployment causes crime. But do we really have an unemployment situation? There is work, despite we have COVID-19 and persons have been laid off. There is work. And for some reason, young men, young women just choose to not accept those jobs because they figure it is too much hard work for too little pay. And you'd ask them, what is good enough pay? They'll tell you, for the month, I need $3,000. But you tell them, but you have no skills. You didn't finish school. What type of job do you expect to get? And they'll pay you $3,000 a month. They'll tell you, but I could sell
Not
my
just
drugs. So
$3,000 a month, but for limited work because they don't want to do too much work for the amount of money that they
precisely,
want.
Hmm.
precisely. And they don't understand to be able to make money by not doing anything much, you need to have a certain level of expertise. For example, you're a doctor, you just see somebody and say, well, that is wrong. Then you have to pay a $200 or $250. So one, people will say unemployment, but I don't think we have an unemployment situation. I think it's a situation where young people just choose to um, not accept what is available and use crime as an alternative. I think it has to do with start with the home and the family. We have too many families where parents children are being raised by the TV more or less or by social media and their devices. So most times you have parents who work odd hours, so there's no supervision in the home. Before it'll take a community to raise a child. So you have mother, grandmother, aunties, uncles, neighbors, everybody would participate and assist in raising that child. Right now, there's no more of that. And for obvious reasons, people change, society has changed. There's so much going on. People don't trust people with their children. So children stay home, parents are there, there's no supervision. So there's a lack of care and attention. So children are allowed to explore and to wander and to probably dabble in things that they're not supposed to be dabbling in. So um, unemployment, the breakdown of the family is one. And of course, you have single parent households. And one will agree and of course, some people were raised by single parents and they are upstanding people in society. But we need to not discount the fact that it takes both parents to raise a child, not both parents living under the same roof per se, but both parents playing an active role in the child's life to properly raise a child and to groom that child into a functional member of society. So there's that. And then you also have the education system who in some cases would probably fail or some students would fall through the cracks. I know before we had a limited amount of secondary school, so not every child would have gone to secondary school. Now, every child goes to secondary school, every child, irrespective of their learning ability or capability. So that has allowed students to fall through the cracks. Because when you have students who go to secondary school who cannot write their name, who cannot read, cannot write, these students are more, I'll say, technical. So they're more hands-on as opposed to theoretical. And the school system in its current construct, it does not permit or allow them to blossom or to grow their talent or to nurture their skills. So I believe that is another avenue for crime dropout. So children get frustrated and they just choose to not go back to school. They drop out and the next best thing to do is to probably crawl out on the block and these things. And
Satellite
I think,
crime.
yeah, and lastly, my last point, because I'll go on online, but my last point I will make is we have influencers in our communities, grown people who know better. Most times they have a family, they have the children who are not involved in crime, but they actually groom other people's children to participate in criminal activity. So they would give them probably, even though the child has issues at home, the parents can't really afford, they probably give them a pair of shoes, a little gold chain, they let them ride a scooter. So you have these influencers in society, quote unquote, high society people who basically perpetuate crime by roping and by grooming children into a life of crime.
I agree with you. You mentioned quite a few points. So, in terms, basically, you're saying that there's a breakdown of the family structure, the lack of the community level of raising a child, and also we have the education system. Now, in terms of, I want to tackle the education system a little bit. I don't know if you'd agree with me, Jade, but I think that there is a need for a different system other than universal secondary education, where there are children who do not do well with the typical educational structure. So, first, when we have organizations like the care schools, where they teach you life skills that you can do carpentry or electrical or baking or different things, and learn to work with your hands and basically learn a trade. I think we need to incorporate more of these struggling students instead of letting, like you said, letting them fall through the cracks in the education system. We need to find some sort of way to funnel them into a trade, see where their interests, where their skills, where they can do something other than just try and get 5 CXCs and then they're just out on the street. So I'm not sure if you agree with me, Mr. Jade Gustav, if you'd like to chime in on that.
Oh, yes, most definitely. I totally agree with you on this one. I believe we need to tap into the skills. For example, there are some young men who are skilled with singing. They're good at drawing. For example, mechanics as well. So we as a people need to tap in and not allow those skills to go to waste. There are so many skilled men, tradesmen, right? And they're passing away, they're going on, and they're living with the skills that they have,
The
learned.
knowledge.
Why not feed those, yeah, those the knowledge that they have learned? Why not feed the young men under them and have them learn what those elders have, acquired throughout the years? I
I
totally
agree
agree with
with
you on
you.
this one. Yeah.
Especially in the fishing community, we see that in the fishing community now, where most of the current fishermen are older than in their 40s, in their 50s, and they are still doing the fishing and sure.
Reneata,
We got cut off.
Yes.
Okay.
briefly.
Sorry about that. Internet issues all around. Yes, I was saying, like, with the fishermen, it's something we see happening now where in, let's say, 10 to 20 years, we might have very few fishermen out fishing and being able to earn a living from it, and even being able to supply the island with fish, because the young people are not interested in that as an occupation. So I don't know if there's any interest within the education system. I'm not sure if there's anybody advocating for it at the moment. If anyone it knows of anything that's coming in the works regarding trying to revamp the education system to prevent this falling through the cracks we have happening with our youth, because we're seeing it as we're seeing it now in terms of the crime situation. Any other comments from you, Nikolai, regarding education, the youth crime, or
All
should
right.
we continue on?
Um, with respect to the education system and the whole aspect of vocational training, whether it's carpentry, masonry, mechanic, tailoring, whatever have you, I think uh, school now is streamlined. You find out what students want to do. You find out what their skills are, and you fit them into a program. It's almost as if what obtains right now, people are swimming against the tide. So you don't want to go to school and read books, but you like playing in car parks. But you are almost forced to do something that you don't want to do. And I guess that is where the the push and pull effect comes into play, and you find students rebelling or young people rebelling. So I think it's a holistic approach in terms of revamping the school system to accommodate both persons who are academic or theoretical and persons who are um, technically savvy or more hands-on. So I will agree with your points and say that is something we definitely have to look at if we want to tackle deviance among young people, and of course keeping them focused and on the right track.
Agreed. In our chat, we had mentioned about when it is that you try to correct a youth on the street, the type of feedback you get. It's usually you either get cussed out or you get insults. Jade, what kind of reaction do you get from the youth you work with in Babono when you try to guide them along the right path?
Uh, Honestly, it's straight positive. I do not get any negative from the young men because I say young men because that's who I usually work with. They usually welcome what I have to bring to them, and I believe they're misunderstood. They're not angry. They not carry anger around. They're they have that love in them. They just have that defense. So did not know if you're going to be judgmental towards them because that's what they have, experienced throughout the years, from going school, leaving school. They smoke marijuana on the block, and it's like, there is another one. So it's like they put up that defense, but with me, I did not get that negative vibe from them at all. And it's not just for Babuno, because I've worked with young men who have been in prison, left prison. Okay, so it's really even other communities as well. So it's really a mindset thing. We need to engage the young men, have a different approach, really, and not be judgmental when we come to them and speak to them, but give them that listening ear. Listen to them. Give them that upliftment. Let them know that they can do better. They can be better individuals. Do not, put well. How would I say that? Do not use all your how would I say your trophies. Not show them all your trophies and say, hey, I've done this, I've done that. It's basically belittling them. So rather uplift them up, and show them that they can do better. They can be just like you. They can even do better than you. Really.
I agree. It's almost like you need to break the cycle.
Yeah.
Yes, right. We have a question for Mr. Lansiquot from the chat, from the live chat. Mr. Lansiquot, what's your take on some of the community members who promote criminal behavior because they benefit from it?
Well, that goes back to the old adage, "Sipani city where sipani vole." So you see, persons benefiting from the proceeds of crime. That's been going on for some time, but now it has escalated. So before, and it starts off simple. You want limes, you don't have limes, but you buy limes from somebody you know who don't have any lime trees. So it is as small as that to persons selling drugs and engaging in gun violence. It is the same thing. And when the sooner we can realize that and address that issue holistically and say, hey, crime is crime, irrespective of how small it is or how big it is. Because you'd hear person saying, oh, they're giving the fellas guns to go and do their dirty work, or they're giving the fellas drugs to go and sell. But what about you who buying mangoes from a man you don't have no mango trees, or buying bread from somebody you don't have no breadfruit tree? It is the same crime. You are benefiting from the proceeds of crime. So we need to tackle crime on a holistic level from all aspects, as small as it is, to the level of gun violence and the selling of drugs and illicit narcotics. But with respect to on a community level, I believe in community. I believe in community. And I believe if enough people stand up and say, hey, we've had enough of what you're doing there, and we are going to stop you, it will stop. Because the truth and in fact, people are good people. People are genuinely good people. And it's a very small number of people perpetrating crime and doing these things. It's a small amount. I don't want to believe that if in Bruceville before have 200 people staying, you have 150 of them involved in crime. It is a small number of people. I don't believe if you're living in Bocage and you have crime, it is everybody living in the area doing crime. It is a small number of people participating in criminal activity. But if the entire community stand up and say, hey, we are fed up of your nonsense and we're going to put a stop to it. You see, persons are afraid because persons are afraid, boy, if I come out, they'll come for me. But they cannot come for everybody. They cannot come for everybody. So if persons take the stand and say, you know what, we're not buying any stolen goods from whether the fellow name is just, I'm just using a name, John Maffrey. John Maffrey sells stolen produce. We're not buying from John Maffrey. John Maffrey have no way to sell his goods. He wouldn't steal. If it's the same way, if it's drugs, we're not buying drugs. We're not using drugs. They wouldn't sell drugs. We're not promoting gun violence. If I see a gun, I'm going to call the police. And you asked Jade a question a while ago, how does he interact with the young persons in his community? Well, for me, it's about mutual respect. I respect them and they respect me. They wouldn't smoke in my face. They wouldn't do these things when I'm around. So it's a situation of mutual respect. And if they have respect for the other persons in the community, they wouldn't go shooting guns indiscriminately. They wouldn't do those things. But like I said, it's a breakdown of in society. Because when I was growing up, if I were to pass and not tell Mr. John morning, by the time I reach home, my mother know I do tell Mr. John morning already. And when I reach home, blicks. And when Mr. John is Mr. John, I have to say it, or sorry, Mr. John, still give me a slap on my backside, and I reach home, I get even more. I don't want my mother to know Mr. John giving me a plug for not saying morning. So we need to, I don't say we need to go back to that, because that leads to another thing where people say about child abuse and all of that. But we need to get back to that community vibe, because I believe the community vibe is what can stop crime, as small as it is or as big as it is.
Well, in terms of what you mentioned, in terms of the respect, the mutual respect that the youth have for you, so they will not do certain things in your presence, they will not treat you a certain way. So then it almost comes back like you have some sort of influence. They look at you and they look at Jade and they see some sort of influence, they see something about you that they want to emulate or they want to show respect to. But then there are other people in the community they don't treat that way. So why is there such a divide between one set of persons that they will treat with respect and others that they will not? I think it still has to go back down to the root of the system in the family or the household. Because maybe the mother does not, like you said, Mr. John might be, you didn't tell Mr. John good morning and your mother would beat you for that. But what if your mother does not deal with Mr. John? And then Mr. John will come and say, your son did not say good morning, and then that starts a quarrel between your mother and Mr. John. There are other situations where that's the reality for some of the youth, and therefore they feel that they have every right to disrespect Mr. John. So the next time they might see Mr. John, they might tell him in his that, throw stones at his window, kick his dog, whatever it is, because they know that he does not deal with their family.
And if I may, Reneata, if I may, just on that particular point that you just made there, I believe right now children are being placed in situations where they don't belong. So I would go out, I would see adults. When I was growing up, if my parents were having a discussion with their friends or somebody older than myself, I wasn't allowed to stay around, much less participate in the people's conversation. Right now, I go around and I see parents, they're drinking, smoking, their children there, they're talking about something that is adult rated, the children participating in the discussion. So I will agree with you on that point and say there's a general breakdown in the home, in the way parents treat the children, and of course the involvement of children in things that is really not the concern.
In adult things that are pure and simply adult. And I've seen it in along over several years. I can say I've been seeing it in terms, especially in the way that the parents dress our young girls. I always say let the girls be girls for as long as they can be girls, because it is already part of nature that we over sexualize girls once they get into puberty and they start to develop. It's worse yet when you start putting them in mini skirts from the time they start sprouting breasts. They're already wearing mini skirts and short tops. And then you wonder why they want to go out, and you wonder why they don't want to be in the house, and you wonder why they want all the latest things, and they'll do anything to get it. And then that leads them to be preyed on by the men in society, even the women in society too. There are those that do it, that just know that this is the way to get at these influential youth. We have a question from Mr. Gustav from the chat. Mr. Gustav, what do you think we can do as a community to help our youth?
I believe better community engagement. So right now I'm part of a development committee in Paybush, and rather than focusing on roads and yes, roads, we're focusing on our human resources. So we're tackling those persons who are unemployed, those who are skilled and whatnot, and we're trying to make the community a family. So like Nicolai said, back in the day, you would have persons correct a young one, and it would be okay. But in this day and age, that's very difficult. So I believe just by having a relationship with every individual within the community, it would be a safer environment. So Mr. John knows Miss Mary. They have that good relationship rather than, they having the problems going on, but they've built a relationship. They respect one another, even though they don't understand each other on certain levels. They respect one another. So the young ones, they're growing up, they're seeing that togetherness. I believe also having like sporting activities as well. It engage the community, makes the community one, it makes the community a whole, and it's a safer environment for everyone at the end of the day.
We seem to be having some sort of internet difficulty on the end of Mr. Lansiquot and Mr. Oswald, who I apologize for him and being unable to come in, but he says the link keeps closing on him. So unfortunately, we will not be joined by Mr. Oswald Montout this evening for the panel. Welcome back, Mr. Nicolai Lansiquot. I have a comment here relating to what we started discussing relating to parents and the family. Melanie Hippolyte says it also means that the parents themselves are still children. They don't have the parenting skills themselves. Is there, I've never been pregnant, but Nicolai, you are a family man, you have some children. Is there a class that is offered to parents when they're expecting children that they can learn the basic skills or get some sort of an idea as to what they should and should not do with their children? Is there something like that available in St. Lucia?
Well, there is no class available, and for those of you who don't know, I have 5 kids, yeah, and at my first child, I was 18 years old. At my first child, and basically, you learn on the fly. You just roll with the punches. As a young parent myself, I basically had to grow up with my children, and of course, going back to what I said earlier, the family structure was there. So my parents was there, the other grandparents who they've been there. So it has always been a situation where you had that guidance. And from my background, I grew up with both my parents in the same house. So I've had this solid home structure growing up. So I always knew what it was to grow up with both my parents and how parents should treat their children, how children ought to be treated by a parent. So for me, the transition was simple. Having children early, it kind of matured me a lot quicker. So things I probably would have taken a longer time to get done, like moving to my home and go back to school and acquire property and do these things. I believe having children younger, mature a lot faster, allowed me to do those things. But I just want to add one point on that: the issue of peer pressure. In my opinion, peer pressure is greater among adults than children because of the age demographic. Because you have younger parents who are now into social media and into the trends and these things. In my parents' age, time, sorry, it wasn't social media. My mother would probably not buy a pair of shoes just so I could have food. My father would probably not buy a fancy car just so we could have a roof over our head. But right now, in this age of social media and technology, everybody is struggling to keep up with the Joneses. So there's some element of peer pressure on the parent side. So the parents are under societal pressures to keep up with the Joneses, and also the children as well. So it is a case of um, parents not being parents, but more or less trying to be cool, friends with the children, and more struggling with their own identity.
All right, I agree with you on that. Is Oswald on with us? Good evening, Oswald. Mr. Montout, can you hear me?
Hi, good night. Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you very clearly. Thanks for
Hello?
joining us this evening. Can you hear me?
Um,
Can you hear me, Oz?
yeah, I can.
Okay,
Hi, yes,
I
I can hear you.
wanted to
Can you
get
guys
your.
hear me?
Yes, we can hear you very clearly. Okay,
All
I
right.
wanted to get your take as a parent
Sorry
as
about that.
well, but parent of a teenager. I wanted to get your take on what sort of family values that you are incorporating in your raising of your son that is going to help keep him away from crime.
Well, my son, he watches me as his role model, right? So first thing I do is I watch what I do around him, how I act around him, and what kind of friends I do. I me back in the days, I was kind of careless, but right now I'm more careful, especially as I start having kids. So what I do is like I keep certain friends away from him. Well, it's true when we go out and like I have all type of friends. They check me, hey, daddy, you know everybody, but watch particular what kind of friends I bring around like at my home. So because like your children actually watch what you do, so they can follow up. Right, that's one. What I used to do before, I used to go out a lot. I cannot call out on that, right? And well, I have my mother. I live with my mother and my brothers and sisters. So like the kind of people they are, they're like kind of ambitious, not like really staying home or any negative vibes. So with my mom and my brother and sister, he kind of I won't say better than he growing up with his mom, because where his mom lives is close to Wilton's Yard. That's like graveyard. So and that area is prone to like little gangsters and all that. So what I did, like first thing I did, I took him at a tender age. He's sure he does still go by his mom, but I have him living with me.
Oh, I think we lost us there again. We need to get a petition signed for Flow to do better with the internet service. Okay, let's go to Mr. Jade Gustave.
Yes.
We Jade, can you hear me?
Yes, yes, I can. Yes, yes.
Okay, great. Do you have any solutions in terms of crime amongst the youth, especially relating to what we can do in the schools? Is there anything you think that we need to incorporate in the school system or any other system?
Uh, I believe, well, like Mr. Nicolai said, we need to incorporate, well, having the young persons focus on the skills that they're known for, rather than forcing them to do what they do not want to do. Um, Also having, let's say, a big brother uh, a workshop, big brother workshop, where persons out there can come in and really have a one-on-one with the young men and the young women. For for example, young men that have been incarcerated. All right, entrepreneurs who are businessmen, businesswomen can come in and just give a listening ear, speak to them, advise them, because honestly, the young men in school they really do not know what it's like to be, waking up and going to school, going to work. Sorry, they do not know the feeling. They do not know the amount of hours you need to put in to get an income, and when the income comes, it's literally like 500 or less.
Mhm.
And that's something Mr. Nicolai mentioned in the group. You know, they want when they leave school, they would want like $2,000 and up. They haven't had a solid understanding of the banking system. Joining the credit union. All these things are important. All right, they haven't really understood that, and they join gangs thinking it's all cool. But when they get arrested, the head swells, it gets hot, and they be like, yo, I'm arrested. I'm going to spend the rest of my life in prison. So it's basically a phase that they're going through. They haven't really understood what life is like. So we need to educate them. Um, you spoke on, not wanting to, stray away from what was asked, but you spoke on parenting. I don't have any kids right now. I will have eventually. But I strongly believe in having a respectful relationship with your kids. Um, Not because you're the parent, that means you cannot listen to your child. That is where majority of our parents fail. All right, we need to listen. We need, well, I'm not the parent, so the parents need to listen. All right, they need to have that communication with the child because you will have a daughter growing up, but you're not speaking about boyfriend stuff, girlfriend stuff with your children. They will go out there and they will look for a boyfriend, they will look for a girlfriend, they will get themselves pregnant. Sex education is important, not just in school, but at home as well. It is very important. So we need to incorporate these things in the family life. Like Miss Nicolai said again, I keep agreeing to everything he has been saying so far. It starts with the home. A solid home, makes the community great again. That is what I believe.
Okay, so you're saying that we definitely need a big brother program where persons
Hmm.
in the community can come in and provide some sort of teachable moments in the
Yes,
youth
most definitely.
also a life skills class in schools where they teach about the basics of money, how to use money, how to make money, how money works, taxes, credit unions, the importance of saving. These are things we don't learn. These are things we
Mm-hmm.
struggle with when we enter the
Mm-hmm.
working world. So these are some of the things we need to
Yeah.
incorporate. So we need to try and strengthen the family life.
Yes, it is imperative to have these things, in hand when you leave school, so you don't have to go through that process. You already know the basics, so it's easy for you. Because we have a lot of young men, they can't, put together an application for work.
Right.
When it comes to dressing themselves to attend an interview, that's they will feel there as well. So we need to, incorporate, these skills in school, not just discipline them, be strict on them, but continue giving motivation. We need to. I believe we're failing our young men and our young women in school and at home, most definitely.
Okay. I have a question for Nikolai. In terms of our traumatized youth, we have persons being molested at home. We have, like we mentioned earlier, they're basically participating in adult situations at home. Do you think that counseling is something that needs to be incorporated in some manner in our communities to help guide our youth to better paths instead of them diverting into crime?
All right. My 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 good friend is a teacher, Marvel Modest Lubin. She always advocates for psychology to be taught in school, and she would say we always downplay people's mental health and psychology and all of that. And I will agree with that because the moment you mention I'm going to a counselor, people automatically assume that there's something wrong with you mentally. So there's this stigma attached to counseling and getting the mental help that persons actually need. So persons who are going through situations where, for example, they're being molested at home or they're going through a difficult time at home, they they find it difficult to go to a counselor because of the stigma attached. So I believe, of course, if counseling is made available and it's something that open, persons would be more willing to go and get counseling and to seek um, 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 mental health help. The next thing is with counseling, you've had situations in the past where counselors they've abused their trust. So young persons would go and confide in them and tell them things, and two things would happen. They either become perpetrators themselves, or they go back and say what the individuals said to them. So I think it's a counseling. The whole counseling aspect has to be revamped, rebranded more or less for it to work properly.
What is the role being played currently by the National Youth Council in terms of trying to work with our youth and reduce crime? Either one of you can respond.
Well, the whole thrust for youth advocacy has kind of died down over the years, and simply because people have lost interest, people interest in other places, and what have you. And there's only a handful of young people who are willing to put themselves forward because most of these organizations are voluntary organizations. You need to
Yes.
volunteer time. There's no salary attached. There's no pay. And if there is a stipend, the amount of work that you need to do, the amount of meetings you need to attend, the amount of things that you need to do, it is so much that it doesn't really one second.
Yes. It's okay. Mr. Jade.
But I say, before we go, you don't find young persons putting themselves up to serve and to advocate for youth development and that kind of thing, and for various reasons. One of them I'll touch on is um, you become a target. So once you begin to advocate for change, for a greater youth presence, you become a target. So persons see one as a threat and as a nuisance. So those once you start to oppose the status quo, what is happening right now, the established order begins to look at you funny. They begin to come after you. So that is one aspect. Two, um, there's a we keep saying that young people are the future, young people are the future, but we don't give young people a chance. Young people literally have to fight their way in. And I'll give you an example. When I went to secondary school, I put myself to serve on the students' council, and in my mind, I was saying then, if we want to advocate for change and we want to see change, we have to be part and parcel of the decision making. Because I believe if you are not part and parcel of the decision making, somebody else is taking that decision for you. And that person may not necessarily have your best interest at heart. So you have to be part and parcel of that decision making process. So I have come up through my teens, 20s in that whole advocacy. Let us fight for human rights, for workers' rights, for youth rights, for greater representation. Because I believe young people are the future. We are the future. And if we are the future, we need to have a stake and a say in our future now, not when we hit 40 and 50 to pick up the pieces from where the previous generations have left off. We need to have a say and a stake in the discussions now.
In terms of what you mentioned, in terms of persons don't want to volunteer, not ignoring the aspect of victimization, but what if there was some way, or there should be some way, that we can put our volunteer work as job experience? Because we heard from the youth all the time. Every time you apply for a job, they tell you, where's your job experience? But if you have been working advocating in different organizations, from student council all the way through to maybe volunteer St. Lucia or to the National Youth Council. And there should be some way you can put this as job experience on your resume, which maybe can entice more persons into getting involved. What do you think, Jade?
I totally agree. I totally agree with this one.
Welcome back, Oswald. You hear
I,
me?
I agree with that point, and I will go further to expound on it. And I will say there are so many workshops, training avenues available for young persons who are part of these organizations. There are there's overseas training, there's local training, there's online training. And these avenues are only open to persons who are part of these organizations. So, for example, um, being part of the whole trade union movement and the workers movement, coming up from the age of 21 right now, being part of that organization has exposed me. I've gone to school, I've traveled, I've been part of international and regional workshops. So much has happened that has molded me into a more well-rounded individual. So I've been part of that organization. So the opportunities are there. The opportunities are there. Persons just need to show the interest, and of course, we need to advocate. So, if you'll allow me to just throw some shade.
Mm.
So persons who are part of these organizations, they treat it like a boys' club. So they try to keep it inclusive. So only them and their friends involved. Why? Because all of these benefits, this training opportunities and things, they want to keep it among a certain group of people. But I believe the time for these things has passed. That was in the 1960s, 70s, 80s. Right now, equal opportunity. Everybody ought to have the same opportunity. And these organizations, they are there, and they do present avenues for persons to go out and to explore and to get trained and what have you. So I believe the avenues are there. We just need to explore them.
Okay. This brings me to one another comment from Melanie Hippolyte on the live chat. She says the youth should be using their smart devices more for educational purposes than for social media. And that is very true, in my opinion, that the youth do not make use of the tools they have today. Before, when I needed to research something, I would spend hours in the library. The library would close too early for me at 6 o'clock. I would never have enough time to do my research. Now you can sit at your home, you can sit on the toilet, you can be in bed, covered up, and you can just have the world at your fingertips. And I don't think enough youth make use of that. They always lamenting that there's nothing available to them. But I can learn to bake a cake on YouTube. I can learn to make something out of a 3D printer. There's so many things you can do over the internet now, so many things you can learn, so many you hear people say that YouTube is like a university, Google is like a university. Anything you need, you can just, it's just a few keystrokes away. Why is it that our youth don't use their smart devices for educational purposes and rather use it for social media? What is your take on that, Jade?
It's just like having it's just like developing the country, right? If the mindset of the young persons and isn't changed, then you won't have any change. The facilities will just remain there. It will be vacant. No one will make use of it. You'll build a court, but if the young men and women aren't into playing netball or basketball, we'll make use of these facilities.
Exactly.
So the mindset of the youth needs to change first. We need to, like I said, tackle our human resources, work with them. Again, you can take a horse to the river, but you cannot force it to drink. But those who are willing to work on themselves, to genuinely make a change, then we should work with them. We should. And I believe influence, because you'd have a group of five, right? Five young men, five young women. And two of these young men would, you know, focus on their skills, their goals, or whatnot. I guarantee you, the three that are left, they will look back and they'll say, you know what, Jamie did that, or Tony did that. Why can't I? And I've seen it. I've seen it. So we need to try to change or work with the minds of our youth rather than investing in all the facilities, all the because they will have the gadgets are there, sorry. They're there. They have them in their hands, but what are they doing? They're scrolling on Instagram, Facebook, WhatsApp. They're into, other stuff. So we need to really have them change the mindset towards something different rather than focusing on that, the social media. Yeah.
Do you have any ideas on how we can do that? How can we stay the youth's mind? Either Nicolai or Jade can respond to that. Any
You see,
ideas?
I I don't think we have the resources that we need to do that because you see, millions, if not billions, is being spent on just getting young people to be glued to their screens. Netflix and chill,
The market.
series, the marketing.
Yeah.
Right now, Facebook has changed to Meta, so
Else.
it's like you are in a metaverse almost, so you are in a make believe kind of a situation. So that escape from reality with Netflix and chill and Meta and all of what's going on, millions has been spent on there to keep young persons glued and distracted. So I think that is an uphill battle. But of course, I will agree with Missy Pollitt and say smart devices, social media. We need to use our smart devices smartly, and we need to, especially for our kids, we need to schedule the screen time. We need to schedule the screen time because yeah, children now. And I'll give you a perfect example. You have households now where you have children between the ages of 1 and 6, and these children speak with an accent. They don't speak like anybody else in the house. And
Peppa
that
Pig.
and that alone should
Mhm.
be an indication or warning sign. You have 6 people living in a house, you have others living in a house, and there's one child in the house who speaks differently to everybody else in that house. That alone should be an indication of where our society is at.
Yeah, because the influence is coming from the device. The influence is coming from
Precisely
Coco,
my point.
coming from
Precisely my point.
Nickelodeon, coming from Cartoon Network. That's where the influence is coming from. Okay, our Prime Minister Philip J. Pierre has said that he intends to come in with the youth economy. Have our youth been taking advantage? Have they been submitting their CVs? Have they been coming forward to say, "Hey, I want to build up these skills"? Are our youth interested in the youth economy?
All right. Well, I don't want to knock any particular government department or like that, but I will attempt to be as frank as possible. And I will say our young persons need a lot of assistance where that is concerned. Doing up CVs, preparing business proposals, doing their financials. That is important. To open a bank account for your business, the bank requires you to have your cash flow projections, your estimated income, and all that. Most young persons they don't have those skills. They don't even know what these things are. So I believe some level of training even before we we um we go full stream with the youth economy. Some level of training has to be done in terms of getting people up, getting people ready to participate in the youth economy. Because once the youth economy comes on full stream, what you have happening is the finances will be made available. But if you don't have the prerequisites to access those finances, it comes like everything else. You have a bike, but you can't ride it. You have a car, but you can't drive. You have a beach, but you can't swim. So some level of training has to be done in terms of getting young people ready, getting the skills. So the youth economy is focused on your skills. So you are good at making rooms. Let us turn that into a business. Here is what you need. How many what do you need to produce your brooms? How many brooms do you sell? Your marketing. So we need to put that on paper, do it properly so that they could benefit from a youth economy.
Okay, we have a question for you, Mr. Lansico, based on your previous statement regarding the programs. Mr. Lansico, how can we make the youth more aware of those programs? This question is coming from Millie Benjamin.
Well, you see, young persons have to join the organizations, be part and parcel of the organizations. So, say, for example, You have the NYC, you have the SLPYU, you have a couple of other organizations, people who work, you have the trade unions, you have all these organizations. The first thing you need to do is to become a member of the organizations, because I don't think these organizations would circulate um, training programs and to the general public, basically to the membership. So the first thing you need to do is to become a member of these organizations. That's the very first thing. The second thing, you need to become an active member. Don't show up to meetings. You come when you want. You need to become an active member in these organizations. And of course, the opportunities are there, like I said, opportunities for training, opportunities for to be exposed regionally, internationally. I met this young lady at a forum about 3 or 4 years ago. My very first interaction with her attitude, I was like, boy, her attitude is terrible. I can't work with her. And truth be told, she has grown so much so over time. Right now, she's actually hosting training workshops, hosting regional workshops, hosting regional seminars. She's actually traveled so many times to represent young persons, young workers for St. Lucia. And I would say I'm proud of her. I'm really proud of my sister. Well, she's not my biological sister, but in these organizations, we refer to each other as brothers and sisters. So I'm proud of my sister that she has grown. And these avenues or that exposure that she got could have only been made available because she was a member of an organization.
Agreed. Question for you, Jade. What do you
Yeah,
think about targeting
before
crime at an early age with the youth, reaching out through schools and community organizations?
yes, before I answer that question, which you may have to repeat again, let me just make a comment on what Mr. Lansiquot said. Um, the groups, the organizations, a lot of our youth, they're unaware that these organizations even exist.
Say that again.
A lot of our youth, they're unaware that these organizations even exist. Because I would go in different communities, for example, um, like Grass Street, slums, even in Babuno, Colombia. And when I mention different groups that they can benefit from, they're ignorant to that. So I believe there needs to be awareness of of these groups from school, or we need to broadcast it even more.
Well, I would think that the onus would be on those organizations to come into the schools and let them know that they exist, because
Yes,
there has to be membership drives. If you want youth to be involved in your group, in your organization, you need to go to the youth. The youth are at the schools, the youth are in the community centers, the youth are in the ghettos, in the CDC, in the malls. They need to do some sort of marketing in order to get the youth to come to them. So if they're not
that's what I'm,
advocating to the youth will never know that they exist.
and that's what I'm saying. It's like a few are benefiting from, and the remainder are left in the shadow. They're they're unknown to what's going on. So they need to be aware. Well, they need to inform, advertise it even more. Let the younger persons, not just one group, but let other individuals know that these groups are in existence and they can benefit from it. Yes. So, in relation to your question, what was the question again? Sorry.
I had asked, what do you think about targeting crime at an early age with the youth, reaching out through the schools and community organizations?
I believe it's not a difficult problem. I believe every situation has a solution, and this is basically a solution, one of the solutions. Well, if we have well, master guide. We also have the peer helpers as well. We have Red Cross. So these groups can definitely have the young persons engaged, so they won't be involved or directed into the negative stuff like guns and what have you, pornography and all the other things. So we need to, like you said, start, with the young ones. We need to start in the groups, start in the homes, uh, inform the parents as well that these things exist, so they can have the children join as well. So yeah.
Okay. We have actually come very much to the end of our program for this evening. Unfortunately, an hour goes by very quickly, especially when you're having such an interesting discussion. So I would please
That's not enough
ask
time.
our guests. I would please ask our guests when you have some time to please go to the live chat and respond to some of the comments and questions. Especially, there is a last question directed directly at you, Mr. Lansiquot, regarding the SLPYO. I think it definitely needs to be answered. But before we end, I want to give each of you a minute to give your final thoughts on the issue of crime and the youth. Mr. Jade, go ahead. Your final thoughts.
Yeah. Yes. So I believe we as a country, we have a task at hand. Let's not sleep on it. Like Mr. Lansico said, let's come together as one community, country, and let's deal with the situation that's at hand. Um, Too many of our young men, if you know, there is this young guy, Mr. Tervel, who passed away, talented young man. And it's very sad that, the skill that sorry, has, passed away with him. So we need to not let our young men and women go to waste, and let's, talk to them. Let's motivate them. Let's encourage them. Let's give them a listening ear at home and at school. And also, let's not look down on our young men, especially if they have the locks on their head, if they have the tattoos on. Let's embrace them, all right? Because we honestly do not know the situation that they're dealing with. We do not know the situation at home, all right? We do not know if they have any utilities, for example, water or light. We do not know their living conditions. So let's embrace them. Let's not, cast them, in a bin like we usually do. But let's hug them and give them a listening ear.
Okay. Thank you, Jade Gustave. Over to you, Nicolai Lansiquot, for your final thoughts.
All right. Like I indicated earlier, for me, crime has to be tackled on a community level. We need to denounce crime on every level. Denounce crime from the smallest thing, whether it be you buying produce from somebody you know, like I said, who doesn't own any lime trees, any produce trees, to weigh up the scale when it comes to violent crime, gun violence, the selling of illicit drugs, and so on. Crime is everybody's business. Today, it's in Bruceville, Beaufort. Tomorrow, it could be at my home in my backyard. Crime is everybody's business, and we need to do our utmost best to denounce crime, to take a stand against crime whenever possible. These are my last words.
Okay. Thank you so very much to both Nicolai Lansiquot and Jade Gustave for joining us on our Let's Connect program. Apologies once again for Oswald Montout. He did try several times to join in and he kept getting cut off. We are going to be sending in a petition to Flo. I'm definitely going to get that done. Okay, so thank you so very much to all our listeners on 88.5 Suffre FM. Also, those of you tuned into our Facebook Live. Thank you so very much for joining us this week, Tuesday. Join us again next week, Tuesday, as we have another wonderful and interesting topic for you. So remember, together, let us transform Suffre, Forcejac, and the whole of St. Lucia. Thank you so very much.
Thank you for having me.